North Carolina looks ordinary, rivers twisting under bridges, forests thick enough to block out the sun, highways cutting through farmland, stretching farther than headlights can reach. But ordinary isn't safe. Trucks are found still running with no driver inside. Hunters vanish without a sound, their rifles left behind. Houses catch fire without burning, and entire families disappear from the road as if the asphalt opened and swallowed them whole. Even stranger are the footprints that end mid-stride, and the carnival lights that flicker on in empty fields, then vanish by morning. These aren't legends. They're files, reports, names carved into North Carolina towns that never forgot. Lock your doors, put on your headphones, because after this video, you'll never see North Carolina the same way again. The man who left his truck running by the river. The Cape Fear River has carried trade, war, and wreckage for centuries. Its waters are wide, slow, and dark, deep enough to take things in silence. On a cold morning in January 2009, a fisherman found a pickup truck idling near the riverbank outside Fayetteville. The driver's side door was open, the headlights were on, the engine was still running. Inside the cab sat a wallet, a cell phone, and a half-empty thermos of coffee. The glove box contained receipts from the night before. Gas, groceries, nothing unusual. The truck belonged to Brian Douglas, a 28-year-old mechanic who lived 3 miles away, but Brian himself was nowhere in sight. Deputies arrived within the hour. They searched the bank, calling his name into the fog. No footprints led away from the truck, no drag marks, no sign of a struggle. By afternoon, divers were in the river. The current was sluggish that day, the water calm, but visibility was almost zero. They combed the area for 3 days. Nothing surfaced. When detectives pulled Brian's phone records, they found his last call was placed at 12:47 a.m., less than an hour before the truck was discovered. The number dialed was his own voicemail. The recording captured 30 seconds of muffled breathing and then a sound like running water. The sheriff's department suggested suicide, but Brian's family pushed back. He had no history of depression. He had just started a new job at a repair shop. He'd been planning a fishing trip the following weekend. Neighbors remembered seeing him the night before, unloading tools from the back of his truck. He waved, smiled. Nothing seemed wrong. Weeks later, deputies found something odd. A tackle box was discovered downstream, lodged in reeds. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Not a note, but a hand-drawn map of the river, marked with an X on a spot 2 miles from where the truck was found. When divers checked that location, they found nothing. No body, no clothing. Just mud shifting like something had passed through and kept moving. The case remains open. Brian Douglas is still listed as missing. Fishermen along that stretch of the Cape Fear say they sometimes see headlights at the tree line late at night, a truck engine humming, idling for hours. When they walk closer, the sound cuts out. The clearing is empty. One deputy swears that while patrolling the river in 2016, his radio picked up a voice through static, a single word, spoken low, like it came from underwater, waiting. Brian's family still leaves flowers near the bank each January. The truck is long gone, but some locals insist you can still smell the faint trace of gasoline on the cold morning air, because in North Carolina, sometimes the river doesn't just take, it keeps. And if a man can vanish beside calm water, what chance do 2 hunters have when the forest itself decides they shouldn't come back? The hunters who vanished in the Uwharrie forest. The Uwharrie National Forest is smaller than the Smokies, but locals say it feels heavier. Its ridges press in close, the canopy strangles the light, and when the wind dies, the silence settles like weight on your chest. In November of 1981, 2 hunters, David Keller and Franklin Moore, entered the forest for a weekend trip. Both were in their 40s. Both had hunted Uwharrie for years. They knew the trails, the creeks, the seasons. They parked their truck near a dirt road, signed into the hunter registry at the trailhead, and carried packs into the trees. Other hunters on the ridge saw them heading east. It was the last time anyone did. When they failed to return by Sunday night, families contacted the sheriff. Search teams went in immediately. The truck was still at the trailhead, but no tracks led away from it. Dogs were brought in. They caught a scent along a creek bed, followed it for nearly 2 miles until the trail ended in a stand of pines. The dog circled, whined, and refused to go further. On the third day, searchers found something chilling. 2 backpacks side by side in a clearing, neatly zipped. Supplies inside untouched, cigarettes, matches, food, but no rifles, no hunters, and no footprints around them. The clearing soil was undisturbed, as if the packs had been placed there from above. Deputies questioned other hunters. One man swore he heard 3 gunshots echoing around dusk on the first night, not far from the creek bed, but no casings, no evidence of a firefight, just the echo hanging in the trees. By day 6, helicopters joined the search. Infrared sweeps revealed nothing. At night, radios crackled with interference so loud that teams had to rotate channels every half hour. Theories swirled that the men fought and fled, that they got lost and succumbed to exposure. But the weather that weekend was mild, and the forest was crawling with searchers. 2 men leaving no trace at all didn't add up. Families demanded answers. The sheriff filed the case as missing, presumed dead. But no bodies were ever recovered, no bones, no rifles. By the 1990s, the story became local legend. Hunters passing the creek at night reported whispers in the dark, low, urgent, but impossible to make out. Others claimed to see 2 figures at the tree line, standing shoulder to shoulder, unmoving. In 2004, a hiker found a single boot near the same pine grove. The sole was worn smooth, the laces intact, but when tested, no DNA could be recovered. Moisture had stripped it clean. Today, families still leave offerings in the clearing. Cigarettes for David, jerky for Franklin, tokens of hunters who never returned. Locals warn newcomers not to follow the creek bed east after dusk. Not because of animals, not because of getting lost, because the forest remembers, and sometimes it chooses not to give back. But if the Uwharrie can take 2 men whole, what do you make of a house that burns in Cumberland County without ever catching fire? The house on Bragg Road that burns without fire. Bragg Road is a quiet stretch south of Fayetteville. Lined with pine and oak, it looks like any other rural road. But locals say there's one property there that doesn't stay quiet for long. It started in the early 1990s. Neighbors reported seeing flames flickering over the roof of a small, 1-story house. Blue fire, faint but steady. They called the fire department. Engines arrived within minutes, but found no blaze. The house was intact. No smoke, no heat, just the smell of charred wood in the air. Weeks later, the same calls came in. Different witnesses, same house, same flames. By 1996, the fire department logged 6 separate reports of a burning home on Bragg Road. Every time, responders found nothing. Every time, the house stood unharmed. Then came the strangest part. By the late 1990s, county records listed the property as vacant lot. The house, according to the files, no longer existed, but neighbors swore it did. They saw curtains drawn, lights glowing, shadows moving across the windows. At night, the flames returned. In 2001, 2 teenagers dared each other to approach the house. They said they heard voices inside, low, muffled, like a radio turned just below hearing. When they touched the front doorknob, their palms burned red, but when they looked down, the metal was cold. Later that decade, a utility worker noticed something odd in the records. The address still received power bills, all paid on time, in cash, but no one ever saw a resident. The fire reports kept coming. Witnesses swore the flames weren't like ordinary fire. They didn't flicker, they shimmered. Some described them as burning inward instead of outward, like the house itself was consuming something we couldn't see. In 2012, the county formally condemned the property, but demolition never happened. Crews refused to take the job. One worker claimed he watched his co-worker climb onto the roof, only for the man to vanish in a flash of blue light. Seconds later, he was standing on the ground again, pale and trembling, with no memory of how he got there. Today, the lot is fenced off. Officially, it's listed as unoccupied land. Unofficially, neighbors still report flames once or twice a year, always blue, always at night. Some say it's swamp gas. Others say it's faulty wiring, but the house has no swamp, and officially, it has no wiring. Locals keep their distance, not because of fire, but because they swear if you look too long at the flames, you'll see faces forming in the glow. One woman described them as burning silhouettes, pressing against the glass from the inside, trying to get out. The county has no answer. The fire department no longer responds, and at night, The neighbors lock their doors, pull their curtains, and wait for the glow to fade, because the fire never spreads. It just waits. And if a house can burn without fire, what does it mean when an entire family vanishes from a highway, leaving their car, their food, and their lives behind? The Vanished Family of Highway 74. Highway 74 cuts across the state of North Carolina like a spine, from the mountains in the west to the coast in the east. For most, it's just a road, but for one family in the 1970s, it became the end of everything. The Parker family left their home in Charlotte on a summer evening. James and Linda Parker, both in their 30s, and their 2 children, ages 8 and 10. They told neighbors they were driving east to visit relatives in Wilmington. They never arrived. 3 days later, a state trooper found the family's Ford LTD pulled onto the shoulder outside Lumberton. The car was locked. Inside were suitcases packed with clothing, a cooler filled with sandwiches and soda, and a road atlas folded to their route. Everything was intact, but there was no sign of the Parkers. The keys were still in the ignition. The glove box contained their registration. On the back seat sat a teddy bear, worn and missing an ear. Search teams canvassed the area for miles. No footprints led away from the vehicle. No reports of hitchhikers matched their description. Local diners and motels hadn't seen them. When investigators pulled gas receipts from the glove box, they learned the Parkers had last fueled up just 40 miles west of where the car was found. The clerk remembered them clearly, a quiet family, the kids sharing a bag of chips, the parents polite but tired. Between that gas station and Lumberton, the Parkers disappeared. Rumors spread quickly. Some said they had staged their own disappearance. Others whispered about hitchhiker murders which plagued highways in the 1970s, but no evidence ever supported either theory. Weeks turned into months. The car sat in impound, gathering dust. Then, something strange happened. An officer assigned to inventory the vehicle reported hearing music when he opened the door, a faint children's song playing from the radio, even though the ignition was off and the battery disconnected. He shut the door. The sound stopped. The family's relatives never gave up. For decades, they kept sending photos to newspapers, asking for leads. No bodies were ever recovered. No credit cards or social security numbers ever surfaced. The Parkers simply vanished between 1 mile marker and the next. Local legend says that on humid summer nights, drivers on Highway 74 sometimes see a car pulled over to the side, a woman standing near it waving for help. When anyone slows down, she fades into the trees. Others claim to hear the faint sound of children laughing on the wind, carried across the highway like static. Today, the case remains unsolved. The Parker family has no graves, no closure, just a car that held everything they owned for that trip, except themselves. And every year, someone places a teddy bear on the shoulder near where the car was found, a silent reminder of a family that drove into the night and never came back out. But if an entire family can vanish on a highway, what do you make of footprints that stop mid-stride, at the edge of a gorge too steep for anyone to climb? The man whose footprint stopped at Linville Gorge. Linville Gorge is called the Grand Canyon of the East. Cliffs rise hundreds of feet. The river below carves a violent, echoing channel, and once you leave the rim trails, there's no easy way back. In October of 2012, Andrew Carter, a 27-year-old graduate student from Raleigh, drove into the gorge for a solo hiking trip. He texted his sister a photo at noon, boots laced, pack on, the trail sign behind him. It was the last anyone heard from him. When Andrew didn't return home, his family filed a missing person report. Search teams mobilized within hours. His car was still at the trailhead. The interior was neat. A guidebook sat open to a page on the Linville River crossing. Rangers found his trail quickly, fresh footprints in the soft dirt, heading downhill. They followed them for nearly 2 miles. Then the prints ended. Not at a cliff edge, not at a stream crossing, they just stopped. The soil ahead was firm but not stone. It should have recorded more steps. Searchers spread outward in widening circles. Nothing. Dogs were brought in. They sniffed along the last footprints, then froze. One whined, tail tucked, refusing to move forward. Handlers said it was like the scent had lifted into the air and vanished. By day 3, more than 50 volunteers scoured the gorge. They rappelled cliffs, combed the river, and checked every ravine. Andrew's backpack was eventually found, propped against a tree. Inside were granola bars, a water bottle half full, and his camera. The last photo was taken at 1:17 p.m. It showed a view of the gorge from a low ridge. The angle was strange, tilted, as if the camera had slipped from his hand mid-shot. No further images. Theories multiplied. Some said Andrew had fallen into a crevice hidden by brush. Others whispered about cave systems beneath the gorge, but no body was ever recovered. No rope, no broken gear, no bones. By winter, the search was scaled back. His family kept returning each year, leaving flowers at the spot where his backpack was found. Hikers who pass the ridge today sometimes report odd things. Bootprints in the dirt that lead a dozen steps, then vanish mid-stride. The smell of smoke, though no fires are allowed. And rarely, the sound of a man's voice calling faintly from below, though radios confirm no one is there. One ranger put it best: the earth doesn't just swallow footprints. But here it did. The case remains unsolved. Andrew Carter's file sits in the Burke County Sheriff's Office, marked open. His last trace on the earth was the print of a boot, one step before silence. And if footprints can vanish into thin air, what do you make of a carnival that appeared in Cherokee County for one night and never came back? The carnival that appeared once in Cherokee County. In the summer of 1965, families in Cherokee County swore a carnival appeared overnight. Not in the fairgrounds, not in town, but in a field off a back road where no events were scheduled. Neighbors said they saw strings of lights draped between poles, glowing against the trees. Music floated through the night, a calliope tune warbling but cheerful, and laughter echoed across the hills. People drove out to see it. Some claimed there were rides, a Ferris wheel turning slow, swings spinning under colored bulbs. Others said there were game stalls, prizes dangling in the warm air. And they remembered faces: ticket takers, ride operators, families walking between stands. But the next morning, the field was empty. No rides, no tents, not even tire tracks in the grass. Sheriff's deputies dismissed it as confusion, maybe a traveling fair passing through. But when records were checked, no permits had been filed in Cherokee County that year, and no fair companies admitted stopping there. Still, dozens of residents insisted it happened. They remembered specific details: the smell of popcorn, the creak of wooden boards, the reflection of lights on car windows as they pulled in. One woman described losing her daughter's hand in the crowd for a moment. When she found her again, the girl was clutching a paper ticket, blank on both sides. In 1972, a farmer clearing brush in the same field found fragments of wood painted bright red and yellow. The pieces smelled faintly of smoke. When tested, the paint dated back decades earlier, long before 1965. Today, the land is just pasture. Cows graze where the Ferris wheel once turned, but locals avoid it after dark. They say sometimes, if you park along the fence line, you'll see lights flickering in the distance. And if you listen closely, you might hear a tune drifting through the trees. Not loud, not clear, but enough to remind you that once something set up here, and then left without leaving. 6 stories. 6 pieces of North Carolina that never lined up with reality. A truck idling by the river. Hunters swallowed by the forest. A house that burns without flame. A family erased on a highway. Footprints that end mid-stride. And a carnival that arrived once and never returned. These aren't legends. They're records. They're reports. And they still wait for answers. If you stayed until the end, thank you. Leave a like if North Carolina left its weight on you tonight. Tell us in the comments which mystery haunted you most, and which state you want us to explore next. And if you want more, the full playlist of Unsolved America is waiting. But remember, some places don't want visitors, and some stories don't stay gone once you hear them.